Hey, and welcome back to the Strength for Generations podcast. I'm your host, Krista Baker. If this is your first time here, I'm grateful to have you here. If you've been listening from maybe day one, or if you've not listened to a couple of these episodes, thanks for coming back. I really do appreciate you being here. Today's episode is pretty personal for me and my family. This is actually the fourth conversation that I've had with my guest. A few years ago during the pandemic, we started noticing some changes with my husband Mike's health. Those things that make you think, okay, let's just go see if there's anything going on. And so Mike went in for blood work. The doctor called him back and said that he had uncontrolled diabetes, which we were really shocked, even though we had noticed some changes. The way that our lifestyle was, the way that we ate, the way that we exercised, there was no way. We're like, this can't even be. And the doctor was so surprised by the results that he made Mike come back because he thought the lab had messed up his blood work. But the second test confirmed it. And that diagnosis sent us down a rabbit hole of trying to understand what was really happening in our bodies. And what we discovered changed everything about how we approach our health. So today I'm sharing another conversation with our metabolic health expert, Piotr Slawinski, that honestly, I wish I had known this information years ago. Now, if you're new here, Piotr and I have done several episodes together that I highly recommend you go back and listen to. Episode 22 was our first deep dive conversation where we really got into the foundations of metabolic health. And then in episode 25, Piotr came back and shared how he created his unique formulation and approach. In episode 28, we dove specifically into women's health issues like perimenopause and menopause. I'll make sure those are linked in our show notes so you can catch up. But today's conversation builds on all of that and goes even deeper into connections that honestly blew my mind. So if you've been told your labs look normal, but you feel exhausted and foggy, this is for you. If you've been dealing with blood sugar issues that seem to come out of nowhere, keep listening. And if you're frustrated because you know something isn't right, but no one can give you real answers, what you're about to hear might be the missing piece. Here's what really opened my eyes during this conversation. Piotr explained that most of what we call diabetes and insulin resistance actually starts in the liver, not the pancreas like we've been told. Your liver gets overloaded with iron from processed food and fortified foods, and it becomes inflamed. And that inflammation then affects your pancreas and your body's ability to use insulin properly. But here's the thing that really got me. This isn't just about blood sugar. When your liver is struggling, it affects everything. Your energy crashes because your body can't make enough glutathione, which is like your master antioxidant. Your brain gets foggy because you're not absorbing nutrients properly. Your body holds onto inflammation because your bile isn't working right. And you start feeling like you're falling apart when really there's a specific root cause that can be addressed. Piotr breaks down exactly why so many of us have fatty liver disease without even knowing it. He explains how this connects to the fatigue and the brain fog you might be dealing with. And he talks about why your body might not be absorbing vitamins and minerals even when you're taking supplements. One thing that really stood out to me that he mentioned is if your vitamin D levels are low, that's actually a sign that your bile isn't working properly. I'd never heard that connection before. And we also talked about people who've had their gallbladder removed and what that means for their health. And Piotr shares some really practical insights about simple things like good quality salt and how it supports your body's healing process. Look, this isn't about complicated protocols or expensive supplements. This is about understanding what's actually happening in your body so you can support it properly. After going through this journey with Mike and learning these connections, I feel hopeful in a way I haven't in years. Because when you understand the root cause, you can actually do something about it. And before we dive into this conversation, I want you to know there's more information on our website that can help you take next steps. So head over to bakerfamilyfitness.com/glucoferrin, and you spell glucoferrin GLUCOFERRIN. There you'll find a form you can fill out if you want me to connect you with someone who can read your labs. The list of labs that Piotr recommends is right there on the website. It's in the frequently asked questions. And there's also a lot of different ones that you can walk through just to see if this is something that you might want to consider for you or someone in your family. But fill out the form if you have any questions about glucoferrin, and I will personally support you with that. Or if you want to get connected with having one of the doctors read the labs, I will make that connection and make sure that you get set up. Okay, my friends? You don't have to accept feeling tired or frustrated as your new normal. And you don't have to keep getting dismissed by doctors who just can't explain what's wrong. They say you're fine, and that's just their way of saying, I don't know. And you definitely don't have to figure this out alone. So get comfortable. Maybe grab something to take notes with. This conversation is packed with insights that could change how you think about your health. Let's dive in. Welcome to Strength for Generations, the go-to podcast for Christian families who want to build strength, restore energy, and deepen connection with God at the center. I'm Krista Baker, Christian health coach, wife, mom, and co-founder of Baker Family Fitness. I'm here to help you honor God with your health and bring peace back to the process, to simplify what it means to build strength in your body, renew your mind, and care for your spirit, all without losing precious time with your family. So grab your coffee and your ribeye, and let's do this His way. All right, let's just dive right in. Metabolic health. What does that even mean?
Okay. Metabolic health, it's a very wide description and covers basically every singular, event in the body. And I mention singular because the metabolism is an event which is a cascade of singular events happening one after another. So if you focus just on the one, you're focusing on symptomatic application, which always will have a side effects and severe repercussions. So very important thing about metabolism, I always stress, think one thing. In human metabolism, there is no singular event. It's a very crucial point to understand. Everything, it's a cascade. You have to go from the point one to point wherever the end is of that particular metabolic chain to accomplish the wellness. There is no pick and choose. You come here, you give this, or you give this, or you apply this, because it eventually is like a domino effect. It will collapse. So just metabolic health, if I want to just focus on one thing, which I think is very crucial, one of the first side effects of iron overload or deficiency of proteins, which is culprit of just about everything, iron binding sulfur protein, okay? And we have sulfur because, again, without sulfur, there is not one singular cellular metabolic function is accomplished. It is as important as glucose, oxygen, and nitrogen. Sulfur is basically responsible to create proteins. Now, when the sulfur is not present, with the 708 amino acids, we start to have different conditions. Now, the very, very first condition, which is in general happen, it's inflammation of the liver and insulin resistance, with everybody is very familiar. That's the most, I think, mentioned word right now in the entire, world market. So the insulin resistance happen in conjunction with the liver getting inflamed because of liver iron overload. And when a liver iron overload happens, it happens because we accumulate too much iron and we start to develop inflammation, which start to cause us a what we call non-alcoholic fatty liver, which most of the people have it. Now, statistically, around 70-75% of fatty liver is non-alcoholic fatty liver. Okay? So actually it's caused by food, processed food, iron fortifications, and iron overload in the liver. Then creates problem with pancreas to produce insulin. Now, very important parts. In those sulfur-bonded amino acids are two very important amino acids, okay? The first one is cysteine, and second one is metathione. So when you get metathione and cysteine together working, they create ideal bind protein secretion to the liver to create and formulate glutathione. Glutathione is basically our super antioxidant, which is designed to be involved in repair and support immune function in the entire body. At the same time, it's important because it protects us from iron overload and any type of chemical substances, including every single heavy metal. So dysfunction of liver, because of lack of those two sulfur bonded amino acids, it causes dysfunction in glutathione, which has become a main serious problem. The second problem from it is that because of liver inflammation, we develop a condition called chronic cholestasis, which is inflammation condition, which we start to have a problem with secretion and production of the bile. Now, again, we go into sulfur bonded amino acids. There is a 19 amino acids needed to create bile. They also in mother's milk in those 708. So we need those amino acids to create the matrix of the bile. The very first side effect of it, inflammation, is passed to pancreas and iron overload. Lack of those amino acids create structural dysfunction of insulin. Insulin, again, is made from 51 amino acids, 21 alpha and 30 beta chain. Okay. And these amino acids are bonded in various places, but cysteine sulfur bonded. Without cysteine, we cannot create insulin. And that would cause us losing the structural support of insulin production and losing potency of insulin, which will automatically cause us insulin resistance. Okay. Now going back to bile, when it's secreted, it's very important because bile is the main breakdown processing plant for our nutrients, fats, minerals, proteins, sugars. Bile breaks down the fat soluble vitamins, vitamin A, K, D, and E. It's called emulsification. If that emulsification is disrupted because the bile is not secreted properly and has no strength, the molecules of all those components are too large to be absorbed in our digestive system. When they're too large, some of them will get to the bloodstream, but they will never cross to the blood barrier to the cellular level. And that's what is called insulin resistance or diabetes. Everything gets stuck in the blood circulatory level. And our cellular level start to get sick, inflame, and decay. At the same time, bile supports a lot of function in our digestive system, and also with liver, with hepcidin hormone, it regulates with those amino acids extraction and balance of gut flora, maintenance of gut flora, and extraction of iron to deliver to liver to be actually sent to the ferritic storage capacity and to the bone marrow to red blood formation. So this is the core of metabolism. When this start to get disrupted, it start to just basically go all around the body and start to cause all kinds of problems based on genetic predispositions. Okay. Now, very important part is human genes are based on 708 amino acids. Those amino acids, in order to become translated or transcripted from the DNA to mRNA, they have to have 708 of them. Basically, picture a zipper which has little teeth, and each one of them is amino acids. And the DNA sends the message how to make mRNA. And sulfur is the key component to glue basically those amino acids to replicate every single gene and then complete sequence of every single protein. Up to today, In our body, it's known we have around 100,000 different proteins, which have to have every single day 708 amino acid without one being missing in the sulfur bonded form. Otherwise, this genetic replication is completely disrupted, and we're going to have what we call metabolic abnormalities to happen.
Hmm. Something stood out to me there, just talking about bile. Obviously, that goes to the gallbladder, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So what about people that have had their gallbladder removed?
Well, they already have a insulin resistance, and most likely diabetic. They just never be diagnosed properly.
That's what I was wondering too, like with people like that they're not seeing that in their numbers based off of their regular blood work. Like
Well,
why isn't that showing up? And then how can we
actually, if you know what I'm going to tell you, actually shows. Just look in vitamin D. If you look on vitamin D, if vitamin is low, you already know you have a severe bile problem. The reason is if vitamin is low D, it means we're not absorbing it properly. And because we're not absorbing, because the bile is not breaking down, emulsifying vitamin D and calcium at the same time, so we cannot absorb it. Vitamin D is indicator that you have a problem with bile and gallbladder.
Sorry. So
Yeah.
I was just going to say, even if they had their gallbladder removed, our liver still can produce the bile
Yes.
acid. And actually, there's a storage capacity that forms beneath the liver to help store some bile. So we just have to go slow as we introduce more of the fats for the A, D, E, and K absorption.
do you also take like bile salts? Like
Okay. Well, I was just leading to it. Okay. You don't take salt. Just take a good salt. A good salt have every type of salt. There is 9 different type of salts in bile. And if you eat a good quality salt, you will have all type of salts that are needed to replicate the bile salts.
okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot there's so much
Cell can make bile salts. The gallbladder is simply to store it. So somebody with
Correct.
their gallbladder is okay. They'll eventually form a pouch to form it or store it. And as long as we get the liver working well by feeding it the good salts, like Peter said, then we can get things functioning normal again.
Well,
Yes.
and it's going to provide a lot of hope for people. Absolutely. Because I have people in my life that have had to endure that.
They have to go
And-
slow as they're increasing their fats.
Yeah.
Go very, very slow.
That's really good advice. There was something else too, like what about the heart health? Like I know that we talk about the insulin and stuff, but is there something that you want to touch on with heart health?
On what? Heart?
Yeah, the heart.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, you have to remember the first thing, heart is a muscle. Okay. And muscle needs to be fed like every muscle in the body. Well, the delivery system again to the muscle, it's hemoglobin. And then the muscle actually gets myoglobin. Myoglobin is actually derivative from hemoglobin. And myoglobin comes from myoglobin, which means it's the feeding system. So if hemoglobin is disrupted, production of it, it's lack of the amino acids, which are in glucoferrin, your hemoglobin is not going to provide the proper feeding amount of oxygen and glycogen, causing inflammation of the muscle. And that's what we talk about inflammation, that all the cardiovascular diseases, the main problem with the heart or cardiovascular is actually induced by inflammation. Think about myocarditis. Itis, it's inflammation. Endo, you see, everything is inflammatory condition because the muscle is not fed properly, which means it's going to go on stage and get excessively inflamed and it's going to start to cause decay and it's going to start to get the shrinking. Now, when people have deficiency of red blood cells and deficiency of sulfur bonded amino acids, they also immediately develop condition called sarcopenia, even if they exercise. Sarcopenia, it's excessive muscle loss, which is one of the main reasons actually of excessive and accelerated aging in the body. And iron overload, it will cause that because hemoglobin is not formed properly, and also iron will have a tendency to build also besides the organ and the muscle tissue, including the heart muscle.
All right. What did I tell you? Today was going to be a good, juicy one. So grateful that you're all here. And if you're listening in, you have any questions, you know how to reach us. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in to Strength for Generations. If this podcast encouraged you, it would be a blessing if you took a quick minute to leave a 5-star review. It helps more families hear this message and find hope for their health and faith journey. It lights me up to know this podcast is helping you. And if you feel led to share this episode, text it to a friend, post it to your stories, or send it to someone on your heart. God might use it to encourage someone who really needs it today. And don't forget to eat steaks, lift weights, love Jesus, and keep doing it His way.